Ayatollah Khamenei, tweeted almost every day, "Death to Israel."
I want to see no nuclear weapon in Iran.
U.S. President Donald Trump has requested that the National Security Council be prepared in the Situation Room as he returns from the G7 summit in Canada. This according to reports which the White House spokesperson later confirmed to CNN. It may be recalled that Trump was seen in the Situation Room during his first term, along with then Vice President Mike Pence and other senior advisors, when America's drone strike killed the Iranian Major General Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad in 2020. The Situation Room is an intelligence management complex on the ground floor of the West Wing of the White House. It was established in 1961 by President Kennedy after the Bay of Pigs disaster, which revealed a need for a centralized crisis management center. It is in this room where former President Barack Obama and his top aides watched the raids that killed Osama bin Laden. While it's unclear what will transpire in the Situation Room this time, it's important to note that Trump has rejected his French counterpart's claims that he is leaving the G7 summit in Canada early to work on a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. The U.S. president further said Macron had no idea why he was on his way to Washington, adding that it had nothing to do with ceasefire, but something much bigger than that. And earlier in the day, the U.S. president said that Iran should have signed the deal he had told them to sign. In a post on his Truth social network, Trump stressed Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, something he admitted he has said over and over again, and issued warning to those living in Tehran to immediately evacuate. This while Pentagon is expanding its military presence in West Asia. U.S. Defense Secretary had said that he directed the deployment of additional capabilities to the region, posting on social media platform X. Hegseth said protecting U.S. forces is our top priority, and these deployments are intended to enhance our defensive posture in the region. Let's now go straight across to Dr. Glenn Diesen, who's joining us from Oslo, Norway. Thanks very much for being here. First of all, let's talk about Trump's early departure from the G7 summit. He said it's something much bigger than the Iran-Israel ceasefire is the reason why he's leaving. In the backdrop of that happening, he's also been urging people to evacuate immediately from Tehran. We also laid out for our viewers the past instances where the Situation Room was the nerve center. Explain to us your assessment of what's happening at this point.
Well, I think initially when Israel, with the support of the United States, launched a surprise attack on Iran, it was assumed that it would be so overwhelming that it would result in some sort of collapse in Iran and even possibly regime change, which seems to be the objective. However, the Iranians were able to regroup and then to begin to fight back. So as a result, you're now seeing that Israel has less and less ability to protect against these Iranian missiles. That is, its air defenses become exhausted and the Iranians are now using more advanced missiles. So for this reason, it does appear that Washington is under growing pressure to join in directly into the war. So the Americans are now enhancing their regional capabilities, and at least from my perspective, it looks as if they're preparing for entering the war directly on the side of Israel. So this at least appears, but again, there could be some diplomatic work in the background, indeed, for a ceasefire. But at the moment, I think it would be too difficult and humiliating for the Israelis to accept a ceasefire. So it looks more likely that the Americans will join in on the fight.
So you're saying at this point there is a strong likelihood that America will be dragged into that war in West Asia, which has been the widespread fear ever since Israel launched those attacks on Friday. Give us a sense of what that really means for America's position at this time, coming from a point where Trump spoke about stopping the wars around the world and then reaching a point where he has, in a way, enabled this Israeli onslaught on Iran. Of course, the nuclear talks have crumbled. Of course, we've seen how the objective here is to have Iran's nuclear program come to a halt. And now we have the American president earlier on also saying that, yes, it's important to let the two sides fight it out for a while before something can change. And now we've reached a point where it could reach another dangerous escalation to the point that America gets involved, which could also mean a bigger escalation beyond just West Asia.
Well, Netanyahu has been very open about his objective to pull America into this war even before the Israelis launched this surprise attack. That is, I don't think they're able to bring down Iran on their own, so they need the United States. The US didn't want to join initially, so it looks as if what they're going for is Israel fighting, it escalates, and then America has no choice, as they see it, than to join. Now, this obviously has a huge ramification for Trump domestically, but also the U.S. Reputation internationally. Domestically, it's worth noting that Trump was elected largely on a peace platform. He was going to end this forever wars, especially in the Middle East. He was going to bring an end to the war, the proxy war against Russia. So he hasn't done any of this. And now that he goes on and attacks Iran, this is obviously something he criticized both Obama and Biden for possibly starting a war with Iran. And now, again, it's on his watch that he will take America to war against Iran. Also, it's worth noting how deceptive he was, because when he was talking about the possibility, how close they were to a deal with the Iranians, in the middle of the negotiations, this is when they launched the attack on Iran, seemingly attempting to reassure the Iranians so they would lower their guard ahead of a surprise attack. And also the arguments being made by Trump, it doesn't really have much credibility. He keeps saying Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapon. Well, Iran also said they don't want a nuclear weapon, and the American intelligence agencies also confirmed that Iran isn't pursuing a nuclear weapon. What Trump actually means is they're not allowed to have a civilian nuclear program, and all negotiations are linked to Iran decoupling from the rest of what Iran refers to as the resistance, so Hamas, Hezbollah, Yemen, and also, of course, limiting the range and capabilities of Iranian ballistic missiles. So, to a large extent, a capitulation is what they're asking from the Iranians. So, there's a lot of dishonesty, deception, and I think this has split the America First movement within the United States, and it also now makes the United States look very unreliable on the international stage. So this can have huge consequences.
Do you think at any point it was possible to actually avert this? Because we've been talking to a string of experts who've also been saying, well, the only man who can put an end to this is the US president, but he also has been maintaining that Iran had the time to sign that deal, and that time actually flew by. And on the other hand, there's such criticism that Iran has had of lacking transparency when it comes to its nuclear program.
Well, the Iranians had signed a deal. They had signed the JCPOA, which had very intrusive inspections. It was the United States that pulled away from it, and the Iranians were following their side of the commitment. It was the United States that never properly removed the sanctions, and it was the United States that eventually withdrew unilaterally. And as Trump also was quite open about, this was because he wanted to tie the deal into other things, such as, again, the ballistic missiles, their partnerships with other anti-Israeli groups in the region. So this has been, I think, yes, sabotage to some extent. And also we see now some good indications that even the arms control treaty the Iranians were following under the IAEA could have been exploited by the Israelis to get more intelligence on Iran's nuclear program, and also allow them to target nuclear scientists and various infrastructure, which we see now. So it can't really be overstated what a disaster this is for arms control and for diplomacy itself.
Right. One quick comment before I let you go, and that's exactly the point I was wanting to touch upon, where you see that it is a hit for diplomacy. Do you see any scope of diplomacy at this point? Important to also contextualize this, that Trump has left early from the G7 summit, which was supposed to be a platform of world leaders arriving at consensus. It was supposed to be an opportunity for those discussions to take place as well.
Well, at the G7, they said they wanted a de-escalation in all conflicts from Ukraine to Iran. However, that's also not really true. The Europeans do not really want the war to end in Ukraine to the extent it removes pressure from Ukraine and redirects it towards the Europeans. The same as what does de-escalation in Iran mean? As Trump said very clearly, he doesn't want a ceasefire. So what exactly is de-escalation? Usually when they say de-escalation, they mean in Ukraine that Russia should take a step back in the Middle East. It means that Iran should stop responding or retaliating against Israel. So it does seem to be somewhat empty words, because no one is ready to end the wars, but they still have to repeat the slogans. So they say de-escalation, but with no ceasefire and no negotiations. What exactly does it mean? So it does. Iran has indicated it's willing to end this conflict, but which was started by Israel and the United States. But then they have to stop the attacks on Iran. But so far it doesn't look like either the Americans or Israelis are ready to do this. So my expectation, therefore, is you will have further escalation.
All right, we're leaving it for the moment. Thanks very much for joining us.